Hey, welcome back!
Glad that you're here again.
So in today's video we want to explain what a programming language is.
Wait, shouldn't we start with variables?
Alright, let's start with some actions.
So there are two different kinds of variables that we want to show you, strings and integers. So what are variables? Basically a variable is a container holding a value. There are different types of variables, but let's just focus on strings and integers in this video. After you have declared a variable, you can work with it in your further code.
So we are now back in our programming tool. Before we are going to explain what variables are, we want to introduce another feature to you, the comment. When you create a command line, it won't be translated into the computer language. Basically, you use comments to remember what you intended to do in your program weeks or even years later. Creating a comment is pretty easy. Just write a hashtag, also known as £, and then add a text afterwards. For example, I could write hashtag, this is a comment. And this line won't be translated into the computer language. So, let me show you how to declare a string variable. First I write the comment, this is a string. Each variable needs a name. I'm going to call my string name because it will contain a name as a value. To define ras as a value of my variable, I will just write name equals, in quotation marks, ras. My variable name is now a string containing the value ras. So if I want to print the value of my variable, I could just write print, in parentheses, name. And when I run the program, it prints ras because it's the value of name. I could now change the value of my variable to Tim, and if I run the program again, then it prints Tim. So, as you might know from your mathematics class, integers are whole numbers. Let's create an integer variable now. I will write my number equals 7, which means that my variable called my number now has the value 7. Remember that you don't need the quotation marks here, because you're not assigning a string, but an integer. So when I now print my number, the computer prints 7. Now the nice thing about integers is that I could do mathematical operations with them. I could now define another variable, my number 2, and assign the value 5 to it. Now typing print, in parentheses, my number plus my number 2 will return the sum of my number and my number 2. So you see, when I run the program, it prints 12.
Hey Tim, I also wrote a program. It's called the Super Cool Math Program. However, it doesn't quite work. When I add 2 and 2, I should get 4, but what I get is 22. Why?
This might be something that our viewers could already solve. When you see this icon, we strongly encourage you to pause the video, find the solution, and then continue the video when you think that you have the correct solution. So, pause the video and think about it. So, let me explain what kind of mistake Ras made. He defined his variables as strings because he used quotation marks. Adding those strings to each other means that one string will be appended to the other string. This means that the second string will be put right after the first one. In our case, 2 will be put right after 2, and the result would be 22.
Okay, I will fix it right away. I will just copy this program and write the correct one down here so you can see the differences. Remember, if your value has quotes around it, it's a string, not an integer. By removing the quotes, I get integers, and the math program gives me the right result. Alright, hopefully you understood what a variable is. You can imagine a variable as a container, like this one. And you can see that I labeled the container name in this case. This container holds a value. In this case, it's a string called Tim. I could, of course, replace this string with something else, like an integer, a 4. Now my variable is an integer. So you can see my container holds the integer 4. So why am I showing you this container? Because when you teach your students, it is very important that you make sure that they really understand what a variable is, since variables are so essential in programming. And I believe by using actual objects like this container, it is very, very easy to understand the concept. So finally, I get to explain what a programming language is. The computer does not speak our language. It essentially does everything in zeros and ones. And zeros and ones are not easy to understand for humans. And it's even harder to speak in zeros and ones. So we need some kind of language to communicate with the computer. Let's imagine I am a French speaker and I want to communicate with someone who does not speak French, but maybe Spanish. So when I want to give a command, I cannot speak the command in French because the other person wouldn't understand it. So maybe I can choose English. If both of us understand English, I could translate my command to English and the other person would understand it. For instance, I would say, asseyez-vous, s'il vous plaît. And I would translate that to, sit down, please. And the other person would translate it from English to, siéntese, por favor. And there we have a communication. So it's the same with a computer. Only that the in-between language is not English, but a programming language, such as Python, the language we've been teaching you. So when I translate something, a command, into this programming language, the computer will be able to translate it from this language into zeros and ones and eventually perform the command.
So now you know what strings and integers are, and you know what a programming language is.
In the next video, we'll explain what conditionals are. And I hope we'll see you again. Thank you for coming and please subscribe.
See you next time.